Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome back to the Profitable Private Practice Podcast. Today we have Dr. Edwing with us. Hi, Dr. Edwing.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. So happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for making out the time. So, why don't you go ahead and give us, like a 60-second introduction of yourself?
Okay. My name is Ed Wing, and I'm an OBGYN physician in Suffolk, Virginia, which most people don't know where Suffolk is, but they know Virginia Beach. So I'm two towns over from, or two cities over from Virginia Beach. And I have been in um, solo private practice for now. This is beginning our 14th year. We just had our anniversary this week. And I have a general OBGYN practice. However, within that practice, I have a specialty practice, which is the Heavy Bleeding Center of Hampton Roads. And that is a business that helps women find treatment and transformation in life from their heavy bleeding, bleeding problems.
That's amazing. It's also okay. I was ready to say Richard. I don't know if this is all true. Let's hear it from his mouth. So, yes, it is. That's amazing. So, why did you start a private practice? What was the thought that was like, okay, so I'm going to start a private practice now?
I think it's one of those things that it was a destiny type of thing. So when I've been in all different types of medical practices in my career. I've been in uh, group practices. I've been in private practices where I wasn't the owner, and then finally I was in my own. And I think what happened was that in each of those settings, um, I had always been a leader in each one of those settings,
Mhm.
and eventually it got to the point where you know the different goals and aspirations that I had couldn't be met within the confines of those other types of business entities. And so eventually I got to the point where I said, you know what, if I want to have these things happen, then I have to have my own business structure to support, my goals. And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Okay. And so, in starting your private practice, what were some of the challenges that you experienced and how did you overcome those?
Um, I think there is a degree of ego that sometimes gets into it at first, where, you kind of look at things of, well, look, they did it, and I should be able to do the same thing. As a matter of fact, I'll probably do it better. And I think the difficulty with that is that there's a whole lot of growth that has to happen to be an effective entrepreneur. And if you're not ready for that, then your road is going to be a little rocky. And I think that if you don't have the input into your life to understand things and principles like that, then it just makes it really, really difficult. And I would say that that was my first couple of years, understanding that.
Yeah. So, what specific things did you do, I guess, to overcome that, the ego part?
I think so. The ego was kind of taken down a bunch of notches fairly quickly, and it's the idea that you expect that your office is going to just suddenly fill up magically. And when you're sitting there and you haven't had a patient all day and you're kind of like, oh, this isn't working too good. and you're asking, well, what's happening here? Um, I think, looking back those times, I didn't have much exposure to things that could help me with that. I mean, the internet was not what it is today, 14 years ago. And the whole idea of mentorship, yeah, there was that, but I didn't really have a whole lot of that. And so it was really the school of hard knocks for me, and filled with a lot of trial, a lot of error, and kind of working it out from there.
So what were some of the, if you don't mind, some of the trial and error that you experienced back then?
Um, I think understanding hiring, that was definitely something that kind of evolved over time. And how do you hire somebody? How do you keep them, working for you? How do you create the systems that your employees need to accomplish all of the tasks? And then when you do start to grow, how do you keep from being the one who does everything? Because that, when you start out, you really are the person who does everything. You wear so many different hats. Um, but if you are to be successful, you have to navigate how to get out of that mode. I remember there was a book that I read uh, very early on called the E-Myth. It's actually quite a famous book, and it talks about the three roles that a business owner owns, and it's the technician, and that's the technician is the one who does the work, does the grind, whatever the business is. They bake the cookies, they build the widget, they see the patients, and then there's the manager who's the one that makes sure that the operations, occurs to get those things going. And then the third one is the CEO. And that's the visionary. That's the one who innovates. That's the one who, sets the direction for the business, and in my case, the practice. And even though I read that book, it took me a long time to realize that the CEO is where I want to be, where I have to be if the business is going to actually thrive. And the technician, I mean, unless you're not going to do, seeing patients anymore, you have to do that. But and the manager to some extent is important, but unless the CEO role, moves to take dominance, your growth is going to be stunted. And I will say it took me a little while to make that realization, by myself.
Wow. Okay. So then if there's anything that you could tell like a private practice owner that's kind of new about hiring, what would you tell them?
About hiring, um, I would say that the biggest thing is clarity. So, a lot of times we hire people for a role because we know that we have that role, but the clarity of exactly what we want them to do, you know, unless we're very intentional about it, can sometimes show up after the person is in that position. And I would say that it really needs to be, the very first thing. Like, you have to have clarity in what that person, is going to achieve in your organization. And the interesting thing is clarity, it takes time and it takes effort to get that. It's not something that is just an easy thing. It takes like a lot of thought work. it takes a lot of, design and, you know, for some people, it might not even be a pleasant thing to, to work towards. But the thing is, the amount of time, if you put into that clarity seeking, the amount of time that you spend in that will be far less than cleaning up the mess when things aren't clear and
Yeah.
systems break because the clarity just wasn't there.
Okay, that makes sense because the people you hire aren't mind readers. So they don't know what you want them to do until you tell them. Okay, that's right. I like that. Yeah. So, what are some of the experiences, some of the successes that you've experienced now? After you've been in private practice for a while, what are some of the successes you've had?
I mean, well, one of the successes that I, I'm very blessed. It's 14 years, and I survived a pandemic, you know, and actually, have grown in that time period. And so, and my aspirations for where we're going are the most clear um, that they've ever been. And so I think, I would describe that as a evolution is the win. Evolution is the win. I think that's the best way for me to put it because
Mhm.
the place where I am now is light years from where I started. And I can actually, you know, I'm clear and I see the end point. I see where I'm going. I see where I want to be, and that kind of guides everything. So that in itself is a win. But um, I think one of the other wins for me was just um, in that journey, in that evolution, learning how to leverage the whole AI experience that we have in the world now in accomplishing a lot of that. And so for me, that's a huge win.
Okay. And so I will ask about that AI in a second, but you did mention that you made it through the pandemic. So what were some of the things that you had to put in place to make it through that time?
Yeah, I think things during that time were just very, very liquid, like there was no definite thing there. But in terms of like, it's not like I sat down, on day one of quarantining and said, okay, here's what we're going to do and just go through it. Because, there were a lot of things that were, completely unexpected. Like for a specialty that does surgery like me, surgery was gone. Like they literally closed down the operating room to anything but emergency surgeries. And for OBGYN, other than like surgeries related to deliveries, everything else for the most part is elective, meaning people get scheduled for it. They come in at a later time. You know, we have our emergencies too, but most of it is elective. So that was gone. And, that's a high ticket item for OBGYN practice. But just learning how to do different things. We did, some telemedicine, back then. We did some visits that, we just kind of maintained, certain standards of what we would do and what we wouldn't do, the masking and all of that. And just kind of made it through with that. It wasn't pretty. I could say it was a it was a difficult time for all of us here. But at the end of it, um, we were able to negotiate through it.
That's good. That's amazing. And so based off the past question, like the successes that you experienced, what was it that made those successes possible?
I think part of it is something that I've developed in myself. I'm always learning. I'm always reading books. I'm always speaking to people. I'm always trying out new things. I'm always, trying to, grow and become better at what I do. And I think that sets the ground for a lot of things. And your mother, Dr. Una, always speaks about sitting with the what if,
Mm.
you know, asking that question, what if I did this way instead of that way? What if I could accomplish this? What if, somebody did this for me? What if, and just asking that question a lot and not having, the attitude of, this can't be done, but more of, well, how could this be done? Who could do this for me? What if I thought about this differently? Having that kind of, mindset, helps to, keep things moving along and for growth and scaling to happen through that.
That's amazing. And so you did mention Dr. Una a little bit, so I'll ask a question about her. I know she talks about dream business and dream life. So the successes that you've had in your practice and the growth you've had in your practice, how has that made, your dream business and your dream life possible?
Um, So the dream business is, in evolution, the heavy bleeding center. I have great aspirations for that, and it's such a needed and necessary thing. And it's one of those things like I am amazed that somebody didn't sit and think of this before, because there are just so many women who suffer with this problem, and I would say suffer in silence. And
Mm.
I guess I kind of came into it, um, in a I've always helped patients with that problem. But something clicked one day, and when I realized that I could really help these women to experience life transformation, and that's really what it is. When you go from having periods that incapacitate you and keep you at home and stress your whole work life to like it's gone, it's controlled, it's good, and just all of the things that come because of that. It's a very good feeling, that I get to help people in that way. And I'm sorry, I got a little off the question there, Jenna, but but I think that all of this just kind of pushes me along and helps me to do the things to scale that, to make it to make it a reality, because I think that what I do now to help these patients, I need to have more reach, you know, because there's a lot of patients that don't know that I exist right now. There's a lot of patients who are, and frankly, a lot of the things that have happened, a lot of patients come to me and then I treat them, along very, strict, clear pathways.
Yeah. Mhm.
And they tell me at the end of this, I went to another doctor for this problem and they didn't help me. And I come to you for this short period of time and you solve my problem.
Mhm.
And I really think that all of the wins, all of the evolution, all of those things have just pushed it where the reality of, yeah, this is going to happen. It's not a matter of like, could it happen? I'm not in the what if I was able to do this for women's stage. I've passed that. Now I'm in the let's get this done and how can I do these things to get it done.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually excited about it because I think, if you interview me next year, I think I'll have a lot of news for you.
A lot of news for me. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna go back to that AI question. So I hear you're heavily involved and you already mentioned it just a little bit. So could you give us, like a little bit of a sneak peek into what it is that you do?
Yeah. So it's actually a very short period of time that this has been going on. I would say it started in 2025, and it just started in like dabbling, doing a little bit of this, doing a little bit of that. And I think somewhere in maybe around August, when the new version of ChatGPT came out, I realized um, that you can use uh, these LLM products, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and there's multiple other ones, agentically. And agentically means that you design them in such a way that they become taught in certain tasks and abilities, and you keep going back to them for those tasks and abilities. So I like to call them employees instead of agents, because I literally treat them that way. And so, I basically, when I need to do something, I create a new employee that does that. And I go to that employee to accomplish the things. So to give you an idea of like one, I have one that is a simple one. It was one of the earlier ones that helps me with billing. And I do repetitive billing in terms of ultrasounds. I get an ultrasound done in the office, and then I bill out the codes for it in the diagnosis codes. Well, this employee has been trained on all of the ultrasound codes, and it keeps itself up to date with those codes. And I tell it what the experience was, and it kicks out the billing codes for me, which my VA takes and sends to the biller. And so, if I were to talk about what that process was like before and what it's like now, I mean, before, honestly, it would take me like between looking up the codes, in a book or even electronically, and writing them down on a sheet and then transferring it to the EMR and then sending it off. Probably it would take me about, 5 minutes per ultrasound. Now with this employee, it takes me like 40 seconds. And so, and this is an old timer. This one has been around for a long time. But there are newer ones that are like advisors. So I have one that helped me to hire a front office person. And it was very encompassing, from looking at resumes to making recommendations to having me ask about salary to having me, it's just, I use them, tremendously, and it cuts down so much in what I would have to do if I didn't have that.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So this is a I'll ask this. Is there any way that the business school specifically has let's see, like inspired kind of the AI work? I know sometimes there are classes on AI and how to use AI to do this, but is there anything you've learned from those classes that inspired this?
Um, so I think that the way that the business school has helped me with that, not, I wouldn't say so much directly with the AI, but with the principles of why I would use AI. And the whole idea is that, look, I'm just going to make up numbers, right?
Mm,
If I am allowed to do things at my highest value, right? I could probably make, if presented with the work and the things that I do over and over, I could probably make more than $2,500 an hour. Probably. I'm just giving a number. It might even be more than that, but it's a big number, right? I think $2,500 an hour is a pretty good,
yeah.
pretty good salary. Um, but the thing is that my time, oftentimes, if I'm not careful, gets filled with things that if I were hiring somebody, I'd pay them 15 to $20 an hour to do a certain task in an hour.
Mhm.
And so if I do that task, then there's a tremendous loss of potential, right? Because I could just get somebody else to do that task and leave me to do the thing that I can make $2,500 on. And that is something that in the school, it's taught about, the 80% and the 20%, and how 80% of the things that we do only generate 20% of the outcomes. And there's this 20% of activities that will generate the 80% of the outcome we want. And that we have to focus on the 20%, to be able to, really be successful and thrive. And absolutely things that I've learned from EBS. Um, but I think that, the dabbling that I did, so to speak, you know, created this thing of, okay, well, how can I use this technology to take over those 80% things from me,
Mm,
and so that I can stay in the 20%.
mhm,
And it truly does, because most of the stuff is okay, maybe they're not $20 an hour activities. Maybe advising about hiring somebody, maybe that's a 75 you know, dollar an hour task. But the thing is, it's much less than my $2,500 an hour task.
yeah.
And so it's just you know, leveraging AI to take those smaller tasks away from me and let me do the bigger, higher level, higher revenue things.
That's amazing. And then so to, anybody who's listening, my advice from this would be to book a call. So on GMD has there's a lot of things. There's business school, there's PPP, and there's everything. And you may feel, okay, maybe the business school isn't exactly right for me. So you'd want to do something different. And so we would advise you to book a call. So you can go to entremd.com/success to book a call, and the team will help you figure out what exactly is your next best step, because EntreMD is here to help you with any and with everything. So, to Dr. Edwing, my very last question for you is, if you could tell a struggling private practice owner one thing, what would you tell them?
Be focused on getting clear with what you want, and what you need to get there, even if you can't do it just yet. If you get clear on that, and take on the mindset of refining that clarity, constantly. Because the thing is, when I started EBS, there was no heavy bleeding center of Hampton Roads. It wasn't even a thought. Um, but the thought of having a thriving business was always there. It's just the clarity of that, refined into, this one thing. And I think a new person, if they do that, and maybe it's just setting aside time every week, to just sit in a chair, with a cup of coffee, and to, to do that and to refine it. And Dr. Una always talks about her reinvention by imagination, um, and just imagining in vivid detail the thing that you're trying to do clearly, and taking that as a habit, even a daily habit, to do that, and that will do wonders for you.
That'll do wonders for you. Okay, so read. Can you say exactly what she says again? What Dr. Una says?
Reinvention by imagination.
Reinvention by imagination. Yeah.
Yes.
So we will take that. Thank you so much, Dr. Edwing, for this. This has been an amazing interview, and I've learned all of the things now. Thank you so much. Thank you so
All
much.
right. You are very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And for everyone else who is watching, do not allow this podcast to be your best kept secret. So if you know somebody who's going through any of these things, you can share this podcast with them. There's a private practice doctor that you can share this podcast with them. Don't allow the podcast to be your best kept secret, and we will see you next time.